Okay.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for your interest in learning about an easier way to collect learning outcomes data. I'm Debbie Furlong, and I'm going to kick us off today. Over the last couple of years, my office, Institutional Research and Assessment, has supported the campus's use of AEFIS, which is a platform that does many different things. Marianne's trying to get to the next screen. There we go. The first thing that we supported with AEFIS was annual reporting, and that's going pretty well, and we're working on that right now. The second AEFIS solution that we rolled out was faculty professional activity reporting, which has been a bumpy road, but we're still working on that. The third thing that was rolled out in AEFIS, my office hasn't been too involved with, but it's the student evaluations of teaching, moved into an online environment managed through AEFIS platform. AEFIS's most well-developed set of solutions deal with outcome assessment, which is what we're talking about today. The reason that we've waited so long to roll out this best part of AEFIS really is because we were waiting for Brightspace to be implemented and sort of stabilized a little bit, although that may be a bit over speaking. So our IRA's role in program assessment, student learning outcome assessment, is to help programs gather, organize, and summarize the data that you need. So we don't write your outcomes and we don't implement your, we don't teach your students, but we try to help. So we are in a supportive role. Our first effort to support this project has been to gather a team of experts and allies, which is the group that I have here with me today. Our experts include the fabulous and very patient Sandy, who's been our faculty guinea pig. Sandy's been working all year, sort of helping us figure out how this can work in AEFIS and how she's been our pilot project really. Nicole Weiss is also here. Nicole has manned the helm of TK20 assessment for the School of Education. TK20 is an assessment juggernaut that does very much the same kind of thing that we're trying to do for the whole campus with AEFIS. And there will come a time when SUNY Oswego has to decide whether or not we can continue to afford both platforms. And I think we eventually will try to move everyone onto AEFIS, especially if it turns out that it does everything we need. Murat is here, an associate dean from the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. His position situates him as having responsibility for helping our academic programs maintain useful assessment practices. The work that we're going to be describing today and walking you through is work that all of the associate deans will be very, very involved with. They will be playing a central role. So Murat is here representing himself, but also sort of reminding you of the central role that the associate deans are going to be playing. Marianne Preston is my right-hand woman in the office. She's our assessment expert. The combination of, many people don't know this much about Marianne's background, but she has a degree in statistics and she has many years of working in K-12 assessment. And her work here at SUNY Oswego has centered around strategic planning and assessment. So she brings a lot of expertise and she's been an indispensable part of bringing this up. So now I'm going to turn things over to Sandy to sort of kick off what we hope to get done and to get us started.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sandy Bargainnier. I used to be the department chair in the Department of Health Promotion and Wellness in the School of Education. I am no longer in that role, but I am now the program coordinator, and I helped develop the new Integrated Professional Studies degree program. And so that's in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. So I jump back and forth between two colleges, but I have to admit, I probably push this agenda more than anybody else, and totally for, self-centered reasons, but and I'll get to that in a second, but really I hope, and we all hope that by the end of this session that you really value using AEFIS to manage the assessment process. And that you'll be able to at least identify some of the steps, or go back and listen to this recording or look at our PowerPoint and say, okay, how do I start to set this system up? Next slide, please. So one of the things that I said, it was self-serving. I was in the School of Education. I showed up in 2013 as a department chair, and I had to write annual reports, right? A lot of you do that. I had to write assessment reports. And I had been at Syracuse University, I'd been at Penn State, I'd been at other schools of education. And quite frankly, for about 20 years, I have never created a spreadsheet. I've never had to collect data from faculty because we had systems and platforms in place that did it. So the assessment person would hand me a report, and then I could interpret it and analyze it and write about it. So I show up here, and Nicole wasn't here yet, but other people were. And again, we're given reports. And so, assessment report writing wasn't difficult. I'd done it. I had the data. It was great. 2022, now I'm program coordinator of IPS, Integrated Professional Studies, in the College of Liberal Arts and Science. And I emailed Murat and said, so how do you do assessment? He's like, it's up to you. And I'm like, oh man, this is not going to work. I'm not doing this. I'm not collecting stuff from people and putting spreadsheets together. I've been spoiled for 20 years that there needs to be a system in place. So I contacted the Institutional Research and Assessment Office and Debbie and Marianne. And so push the agenda that we need to do this. And so I've been pushing them for like a year and a half. And they've been putting the pieces in place. And then we had to get the vendor who's AEFIS ready to do this as well. And actually I was on the phone with him this morning, still trying to get him to do a couple things. So I hope you'll all see by the end of this, as a faculty member, as a chair, as a program coordinator, as someone who's had to do accreditation, someone who's had to write, a 5-year retroactive self-study report just this past year, or someone who cares about whether my students are really learning or not. This will be really advantageous for you. And yes, there's some upfront work that may have to be done if you haven't done it already, but most of you have. But then it's going to make your life a lot easier, a lot easier. So this slide has a lot going on with it, but it is basically a picture of what I call, and most people call, backward design. When you design a learning program, a major, when you design a course, you start with the end in mind. You should start with the end in mind. What do I want my students to be able to do and know when they leave this degree, when they leave this course? Okay. All of you in academic positions have to write reports, whether it's, like I said, accreditation reports, SPA reports, self-studies, or even just annual reports. You have program outcomes. And so we start with the gray column, the gray box there. What are the program outcomes? What do you want your students to know and do as they exit your program? Okay, so you have those already. This might be a good time to meet with your faculty and your program and think about, are we really measuring what matters most? Are we really happy with our program outcomes? Are they really telling us what we want to know about our students and our program? So this is a good time to think about that. You got about a year or so if you want to get involved with AEFIS. This might be a nice time to think about that. But what's great is that we can take those program outcomes and give them to Marianne and Debbie, and there's templates that they're going to create, and Murat will show a little bit later, and they're going to create a course map for us, and they're going to load it all up in AEFIS for us. You don't have to do that. Okay. What we do have to do as faculty, as chairs, as instructors, is we have to make sure that we have designed learning activities, assessments, assignments, whatever you want to call them, that produce good evidence that students are able to meet our program outcomes. So we call that the assignment area. And it says assignment in the orange box, assignment design in Brightspace. For those of you teaching online, of course, we design in Brightspace. For those of you not teaching online, don't freak out. You design learning activities right now in your face-to-face classes. Think of some of you with 172 people in Lanigan. You have learning outcomes for your course. Now, maybe you're gathering that through a test. Maybe you're gathering that through a research paper. Maybe you're gathering that through an oral presentation. You need to start thinking about, how can I get that assessment data from that learning activity, from that assignment into Brightspace? And Murat has assured me, as someone who teaches face-to-face, that even when he takes his spreadsheet data from his course assignments, that can be uploaded into Brightspace. So there are people here that will help you do that if you're teaching face-to-face. But at the end of the day, we need to get your assignments or their data from that assignment into Brightspace. And that's a good reason. I know Ramin has talked about that, because we can use it for Starfish. We can use it for, Banner. We can use it for lots of things, advising. So Brightspace, as much as some of you gripe about it, can really be very advantageous to help us connect all the dots. So anyways, once you start to say, okay, what are our assignments that are going to produce evidence that our students are learning? And we link those from Brightspace into AEFIS. And ta-da, the green column, AEFIS is going to produce and generate reports to summarize the results, and as much as what you tell it to do. And again, you're in control of this. Your programs are in control of this. And you're going to decide, what do we need to measure? What are the outcomes we're looking for? How are we going to, differentiate levels of quality? Maybe that's through a rubric or a test score. And then AEFIS is going to nicely produce reports for us. So then when we have to write those annual reports or those self-studies, we have data generated in a report we can spend our time as faculty, as chairs, as program directors, analyzing the data, interpreting the data, and talking about the data, instead of collecting it from 20 different faculty and doing spreadsheets and going crazy every year. All right. So we have to build it up front, but Debbie and Marianne's division is really going to help do that. I haven't done any of that, and I don't plan to do any of that. I expect to get the report, and you get that just like we've done with Nicole for years, and it's worked beautifully. So that's what I'm excited about, and I hope you will be too.
That's great. We'll start off with the payoff before we look at actual AEFIS stuff. So just to let everyone know, the School of Education developed a comprehensive system for outcome-based assessment, accountability, and reporting back in 2009. That system that we have is currently a maintenance-only system, so we'll have an end of life here probably pretty soon. So we're planning on piloting some programs or some departments in AEFIS through the mechanisms that you'll be shown throughout the day today here. So the system, it serves as a mechanism for electronic collection and management of the data. And so it's very heavy on the front end with implementation, but once you've implemented it, the sustainability is much easier. And by having this system, as Sandy said, it really allows stakeholders to focus on analysis and interpretation of the data. So I'm going to show you a couple data charts that we are able to very quickly generate out of TK20. And so you'll have the same type of reporting through AEFIS. So this is an assessment level reporting. This is for our wellness management program, our health promotion and wellness program, where they were looking at one of their key assessments from 2017 to 2022. And so this was all sections of the course that had been taught in all assessments. So you see really quickly right off the bat, most of the students have met the requirements. But then if we wanted to look at the criteria, we can really look and see where people are exceeding, meeting, or approaching the level of each criteria. So the next slide is going to show where we can look at multiple assessments. And so as long as your linking is there, and again, this is in your implementation and will be talked about in a little bit. If your linking's there, you're looking at a standard or an outcome, and you can look across multiple assessments to see how your student's doing. And so this is really beneficial if you're writing an annual report or an accreditation report, that you can look and say, here's how our folks are doing at this very specific thing. So again, the next slide is going to show what it looks like in AEFIS. So as long as the front end work is done and the linking's been made, you'll be able to very easily get reports such as these.
Okay, getting to the payoff. How do you get there? As we discussed as a group, we were talking about sort of alignment and how we get our courses to align. And I just wanted to give you a little snippet of the planning document that I put together for the IPS major. And I realized I was part of the team that developed the major, and I was the key person that developed the intro course and the capstone course. And I am the person, for the most part, teaching the intro course and the capstone course. So I was very privileged from the get-go to say, I'm going to have to assess this. So let's make sure we use a backward design process and think very carefully about, keeping the end in mind in developing the program and the courses. So the left-hand column of this chart, that we have six program outcomes in the IPS majors. Okay, you're seeing number 3, 4, and 5 there. And those are, like I said, 3 out of the 6 outcomes. In the right-hand column are what you might want to call performance criteria, or these are, some evidence that we would look for in our courses that tell us students have met the program outcome in the left-hand column. Back to the left-hand column, if you see number 3, it'll say, recognize and apply rights, responsibilities, ethics associated with being part of communities, cultures, and organizations, IPS 420. So that's telling me that students will have the ability to demonstrate that evidence in IPS 420, okay, which is our capstone course. If I go to the right-hand column, I'm also saying specifically, I have A, B, and C. Those are more specific outcome, the performance criteria, evidence that we would take, that we would look for, that would say, yes, they've met that outcome. I have aligned those specifically. I teach these online. And so again, it gets back to careful design that I highlighted in green, IPS 420, M5D1. That means in module 5, discussion 1, they will have the opportunity to demonstrate evidence that they can identify professional ethics of a career path or profession. Okay. We can see in letter C that in IPS 420 M5D1, same thing, module 5, discussion 1, they will define and give examples of ethical leadership. So I already know that there's a linkage, there's an alignment there between that learning activity, that assessment, and this program outcome. Now, you can see all the things that are highlighted in green. There's lots of them. We're not going to measure all of those. I was just doing it right off the top to say, okay, we are doing this. We are giving the student opportunity to demonstrate through evidence, whether it's a project, whether it's discussion, whether it's a test, whether it's a reflection paper, that they have the ability, that we have the ability to measure this outcome. So again, we have lots of things highlighted. We may not use all of them, but start real simple. Okay. Now we take that sort of that planning when we're thinking about the course, and this is how it would look in AEFIS. So we have 3 columns here. In the left side are some of the courses that are required in the IPS degree. We're going to focus on IPS 320. Okay, in the left-hand column. If we had clicked on that in real time, we then get the middle columns. And it says select an outcome. Remember, I have 6 program outcomes in the IPS degree. So if we click on, let's say IPS 2, social structures and systems, you can see that, by the end of the IPS degree program, we want our students to investigate or analyze the complex network of social structures and systems integral to individual, and you can read on and on. That's the program outcome, what they should be able to do. Then what's great is you'll see in that same column, IPS 2, social structures and systems, you'll see a thing called proficiency scale down below, and I'll get back to that. But we actually we'll click on that and you'll be able to set for your program what is a proficient score for them in performing that outcome. I highly recommend that all your program outcomes have the same level of proficiency scale. So for example, I've made the decision that a 75% or above deems our students proficient in meeting the program outcome. I've said that 90% and above is target, but anybody over 75% is good. So when you're writing up assessment reports, I can say, hey, 82% of our students were proficient in IPS, number 2 program outcome. All right, because I'll get that data. I'll get a pretty chart. I'll get color coded stuff. It'll be great. But how do we get that data is we have to link it to the assignment. So we go to the third column. And if we were in real time, we would click on the manage button up there, and a bunch of all the assignments that I've linked or could link would show up. And I'm going to just choose it says M5 reflection paper, MII Jedi Champion. And I can link to that. And in this example, maybe I link to the second quiz as well. So you can link to these assignments that, remember, I set up in Brightspace. And if you're not using Brightspace because you're teaching face-to-face, you can set up still the grade book for only the key assessments. And then that AEFIS can go in and reach and grab from that grade book and pull this data in and create your reports.
Right. Doesn't it look a lot nicer and a lot beautiful in AEFIS compared to like multiple spreadsheets you will get from multiple faculty? So, and the process of opting in to use the AEFIS data collection tool is absolutely very simple. And you will get all the help you need from the institutional research and assessment and your associate dean. Associate deans will take the lead in terms of transitioning programs into AEFIS data collection. They will work with you one-on-one. And if it is me or Nicole or Raihan or Kelly, will make the process completely painless for you. I promise you that. I absolutely promise you that.
Yeah.
Right. As a matter of fact, institutional research and assessment has already prepared an excellent template, a tool for us to use. And it's going to facilitate that transition into AEFIS data collection. It's called course or curriculum maps. Course and curriculum maps, as you can see on the screen, has three components: program learning outcomes, straightforward. Every program has these, and you already use them for assessment. Speaking of learning outcomes, this might be a good opportunity for you to look at the learning outcomes and make sure that they're very measurable and kind of succinct. I've seen learning outcomes that covered writing, oral communication, critical thinking in one learning outcome. It's very difficult to measure those. So you may want to kind of refine those learning outcomes while we are working on this. The other component is the courses where you collect evidence of those learning outcomes. And the third one is the courses where you collect evidence of the general education outcomes. So once we have this template already, you're going to work with your associate team to complete it. And then once this is completed, institutional research and assessment will enter the learning outcomes and course maps into AEFIS. And from then on, you'll be able to very easily collect data and complete your major assessment and various other assessments for years to come. And I'm going to now turn to Deborah Furlong, who will tell a little bit more about the template.
And the first thing that institutional research is going to need is your guidance on how your program is structured so that we can build your map in AEFIS. So what I've done is I've created a simple Excel workbook that has a couple of different tabs in it that are the critical pieces of information that we in my office will put into AEFIS for you. The first tab, we're going to paste in from where we have identified your published learning outcomes for your program. We're going to paste those in so that you and your associate dean can review them and evaluate whether or not they are measurable and accurate and what you truly want. You'll notice up on the left side that I've identified the specific codes. The example here is geology. Those two codes, those are banner major codes. I'm mentioning this right now. Many of our programs have both a BA version and a BS version. Most of the time, there is no differentiation in the outcomes. So in this case, this set of outcomes, I think, is going to apply to everyone doing a BA or a BS. It's up to you guys, your program and your associate dean to decide which set of majors may be able to all group together and which need to be handled separately. Nicole has spoken with us about this because we have 50 different versions of education. Do they all need to be done separately, or can groups of them be done in groups? And we're fine either way. So that's what that's a reminder for. The second tab is going to just run your programs, learning outcomes across the top. And we will be, IRA will be pasting in all of the courses associated with your program's primary subject area or subject areas. You can put in any other course that your faculty teach if it's a course where you're collecting student learning outcomes. And that's the critical thing to remember. It's like you will not be mapping every single course that you teach, but we have no idea which courses in the catalog are the ones that you're using to grab the evidence of your students' mastery. So that's what we're asking for here. There are 3 different colors that you see. And this is completely random. I just kind of made up. I picked a few things. But I said, okay, for learning outcome 1, this program may be collecting introductory level student learning outcome evidence from those 2 courses. In which case, we need to map in AEFIS so that AEFIS is ready to grab evidence from those 2 courses and put into the outcome data set for reporting. The other 2 colors are reinforcement, which is blue, and emphasis, which is red. I give an example of reinforcement and emphasis on that 6th learning outcome. Not all programs have scaffolded their curriculum in a manner that this makes sense, but many of you have. And AEFIS enables you to have a visual representation of that and to have an understanding of it so that you understand that meeting the percent of students meeting an introductory level learning outcome may be very different from the percent of students meeting a more advanced or emphasis level. The third tab on the spreadsheet is a place for us to keep track of and begin the process of enabling you to map the courses that you are teaching as part of the general education program. And we're going to talk a little bit later about general education, but a lot of areas this will not be relevant. Like the School of Business teaches very, very few courses that contribute to gen ed. But if your program is teaching a general education course, we will eventually be using AEFIS to grab that evidence so that you can stop, and Chris Lalonde can stop spending his lifetime trying to collect the evidence. The evidence is there. We just need to ease the process of putting it all in one place together. Once we build a map, this is what it looks like in AEFIS, or this is one, I mean, they give you a couple of different ways of visualizing these things, but this is one way that it shows up. So you see that there are different courses and they are associated with places, different courses are places where we will be collecting evidence to meet the different learning outcomes. In this example, we see a lot of introductory level mappings, and we see some emphasis level mappings, that the evidence that's being collected in the advanced classes often is going to be emphasis work. You don't have to collect the introductory and the reinforcing evidence. You can just collect the emphasis evidence. The place where that falls apart is if nobody's mastered at the advanced level, you don't know where it fell apart. But this is all flexible, and we can change and modify these course maps as we all learn. So now I'm going to turn it back to Sandy, who's going to talk about like you know, once we have AEFIS maps set up and ready to receive the data, how do we get AEFIS to talk to the place where the data is coming from?
So because we're not doing this in real time, I did want to give you steps. So I don't know if I'll read through each one of these steps, but this is a good thing for you to go back and look at when you're ready to start assignment linking through AEFIS. So, you know, first thing is you're going to have your backward design process, you know, plan your course and or your program with the end in mind. Hopefully you've done that by now. You've identified those assessments that will produce the evidence that students have learned. You'll develop your program course map template because you've met with your great associate dean, and IRA's put together this great template that you can use. And then you'll give it to IRA and they're going to set up your course map in AEFIS for you. All right. You don't have to do anything. It's great. And then you're going to access AEFIS within your courses in Brightspace, or you can go through your AEFIS dashboard. But for some reason, AEFIS prefers that we go in through Brightspace, and I haven't figured out why. But so Kathy Dutton's office typically will give you like a little AEFIS link in your Brightspace course, and you can access it through there. It's not there yet, maybe, but it will be. So from the AEFIS dashboard, I've given you just a screenshot on the right, because sometimes that's the hardest thing, is knowing where you are. And so you'll pull up your AEFIS dashboard. Like some of you know where your faculty portfolio is. Some of you know where your course evaluations are. Well, there's another widget, I think those are called widgets, called My Direct Assessments. And you can see that for my courses, they're showing up there, IPS 320 and IPS 420. And you go over to that little home, that little house button, and you click on that. And that will take you to where we need to go to start to assign the assignment linking. So again, linking the assignment, you're going to link course assessments that produce the evidence of learning with the program learning outcomes set up in AEFIS. You're doing this already. You've been doing this. You've been doing it for your annual reports. You've been doing it for your self-studies. You've been doing it for accreditation. You've just been probably doing it very paper-based or spreadsheet-based and pulling your hair out. So again, you're going to select when you get to the course link page. Can you just show that real quick? I think it's the next slide. This is what I think we've seen this already, and you can go back. So you're going to get to that page there that I think I showed you a little earlier. And remember we talked about setting the proficiency score. And I said I use 75% and above to be proficient, 90% and above to be target. Well, one thing I've learned for those of you who are using rubrics to measure student learning in your courses. So for example, in my IPS 320 course, I have reflection papers that are used to collect evidence of student learning. And I have developed the rubric within Brightspace. Okay, so it's embedded in Brightspace. If you've done that, you'll notice in the right-hand column there, the rubric wants you to have an overall score. It's kind of a new thing in Brightspace. It was new for me. And so the instructional designers with Brightspace helped, in that case, develop the overall score. And so again, in my rubric, 90 points and above was target, 75% and above was proficient. Oh, hey, that aligns with the proficiency score that I'm going to use when setting up the AEFIS proficiency score. It's really beneficial if those two align. And this is for rubrics. All right, maybe you're not using rubrics, you don't have to worry about it. But if you're using rubrics, you want to make sure that that proficiency score in AEFIS aligns with the overall score in Brightspace, if you can do that. Then you're going to select manage your linked assignments, and then you're going to check your box for assignments that align with program learning outcomes, and you're going to weight the criteria if desired. And we're going to go to the next slide, and you can sort of see what this looks like. So again, if you remember the left-hand column, those are the selected courses that are in the program. I've selected IPS 320. That takes me to the middle column where I select an outcome. I'm going to select, can't remember which one we're on here. Number one, digital platforms. Yeah, IPS 1 digital platforms. I've set up my proficiency scale under IPS 1 digital platforms down below. And then I go to the far right and I'm going to click manage linked assignments. When I click on manage linked assignments, all these assignments show up that have been linked through Brightspace, and I've clicked on the project management assignment. All right, that's the final project in IPS 320. And what's really neat is not only can I say, hey, I'm going to select this. This is my major key assessment in that course that tells me that students have met program outcome number 1, that they can leverage digital platforms to manage projects, find work, market themselves, and work remotely. But what I can really then go down and do is I can actually take it, it pulls in the rubric from Brightspace. So you're seeing my rubric, not the whole thing. You're not seeing all the all the descriptors. You don't see all that, but you can see the main criteria of my rubric in Brightspace. See that on the far right: depth of reflection, required components, writing mechanics, evidence, and practice. So you can actually go in there and weight which criteria you want to use in measuring your outcome. So in this example, we checked everything off. It's all weighted equally, but maybe your program has decided that good writing mechanics is not really part of leveraging digital platforms. You don't need to count that. You're going to count it in their grade in the course, but you don't need to count that specific criteria in the rubric as a key measurement for their program outcome. So you can actually pick specific parts of your rubric that count or that you want to use that generate the evidence that students are learning that specific program outcome. We are told the same thing can happen in a test. I am not using tests in this course, but let's say you give 100 multiple choice tests as in your capstone course in anthropology, and you know that 10 of those questions specifically align with your program outcome number 1. We are told, we haven't done it yet, that you can actually go in there, just like I did with the rubric, and specify those 10 questions. So they will generate that data for your program outcome number 1. So that's a pretty cool thing, that you can drill down that deep in a rubric and or in a test. And again, that's sort of a screenshot of completed assignment linking. We just pulled back the criteria of the rubric.
We wanted to come back just briefly and let you know my office's plan for general education knowledge and skill areas for making this kind of automatic data collection available to the faculty who are teaching in the general education courses. The course map is already largely made. Kind of boring. So much introductory level stuff. What we're planning to begin working with teachers who are going to be teaching general education courses in the spring, with an aspiration that many of them will be linked, as Sandy has described, starting with the spring 24 cycle of data collection. We will begin with whichever general education learning outcomes are up for focus in spring of 24. I say that because one of the conclusions I am drawing, and it's been a long time since I was a teacher, but one of the conclusions I am drawing about the way this works is once it is set up, it is very easy to just let the data accumulate. And there is no reason to change your assignment or change your practice just because this is the year that your class is being assessed. Ideally, if we can get to a point that the majority of general education courses are linked in, we will have much more data spread across a much wider swath of the curriculum so that we can get a truer picture of exactly how all of our students are doing in their general education, reaching those goals. So the last thing I'll say about general education is if you are teaching general education and you're not already working in Brightspace, you may want to spend some time rethinking that, or at least working and speaking with Murat about how he is managing doing his work in face-to-face, but grabbing the outcomes, the students' grades on key assignments and putting them in Brightspace where they are more readily available for this kind of summative work. And that brings us to our conclusion.
So just to reiterate, and I really like this graphic, and I want to thank Debbie for putting it together. But, you know, one of the real goals of this is that you really value AEFIS and what it can do for you. And it can really make your life a lot easier. And you might be saying, well, I got to do all this work up front. The thing is, you've done most of this work up front. All right. If you've been writing reports, if you're a chair, if you're a program coordinator, you're doing that. Maybe one of the areas we're going to have to think about is those who are not putting grades or certain assessment into Brightspace. That's going to be some, you know, but there's help there and we can make that happen.
Are
Okay?
there still people like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And I think,
I thought it was mandatory that we had to have Brightspace.
no, it's not mandatory. And I think we have a lot of adjuncts teaching a lot of sections in certain departments. I think that is a real concern. Because, you know, people are like, really, are we going to ask them to do that? So that's going to be a conversation that I think deans and chairs and program coordinators will have to have about how to collect that. But at the end of the day, you know, this is sort of taking your backward design process. You know, what are your outcomes? Here's the map. Let's link it to the assignments through Brightspace. So that data can be pulled in and generate some really great reports that will make your life easier down the road. There's wonderful resources available here. I don't know if anyone else wants to talk about this more, but all the deans will be, associate deans will be helping out. Marianne has been amazing, and there's training videos. I'm available too. I like this stuff. It's weird, I know, but I love to do backward design and really help you think about your verbs and your program outcomes and are they measurable? And you know, developing rubrics. It's kind of what I like to do on my side. But so I think there's a lot of help available, and this will, in the long run, give us more data, better data, more consistent data, and will make your life easier. Thank you. And question and answer time. For those of you on Zoom,
No, we can't maybe put that on the screen.
maybe we can bring them up.
Yeah, I can drag them
Just drag
over.
it over.
Some faculty use Google Classroom.
Still?
And I don't know, I don't think we can probably do that kind of data transition.
Right.
So Ben, do you have any questions?
More of comments than question.
Yes,
I
thank
must
you.
commend you guys, your team, for this heavy lift. It's something that we have to all work together to make it work. But from what I can see on this presentation, I think it will work, and we just have to work together. I must commend you for a job really well done. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
nice, Thank you.
I have a question. So given that I was at the Rice Creek workshop
Assessment. Mhm.
for assessment, and people are still using spreadsheets, and obviously this would be a nice way to eliminate that. Is there going to be a move where this is something that we are going to request that faculty and departments use? And it's something that we would say is mandatory. Like, is that something that would happen, or?
Once done, it makes work easier.
Right.
Yeah,
I think, you know, I'm going to speak as a faculty member and as a former chair and as a program director. I don't think it can come from above.
Mhm.
It has to come from within.
Mhm.
And, you know, as someone who's done a lot of assessment, you know, I would say at the department level, those decisions had to be made. So I think our goal of this team is to really help get faculty buy-in.
Mhm.
And yes, I heard the concern as well at the assessment retreat. And it's real, because we keep asking faculty to learn a new system and a new thing to do. And it's just like, oh my goodness. Yes. So I don't think anybody's saying this has to be done and it has to be done right away. But I think people will see that this is going to be, it's here. It'll be helpful. There's people in place that will make this well worth your time, but that's the issue, time. And it's one more thing for people to learn to do, but I can't imagine doing accreditation without this.
That's something.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine doing self-study reports without this. And again, I've been so privileged to be able to be handed reports and said, here you go. I'm like, great, I can, that's easy. Now I can think about it and interpret and talk with faculty and do things we want to do instead of spending all our time trying to reach people and get people and collect this. And when are you doing this? I mean, that, of course you're going nuts. So I don't think anybody's mandating this, but I think we would highly encourage.
Yeah.
So,
And maybe starting with Gen Ed might nudge departments in that direction.
Right.
Because they'll already be doing a little bit of it.
yeah, absolutely.
And I'm in school event where we have TPH1, so I
Right,
can't really
you've been-
speak to
right,
it
right,
because
right.
I've had the privilege of already having
Right.
this, so.
This isn't the first workshop done on this topic here. We did one 11 years ago because other SUNYs were doing this within Blackboard because Blackboard had those capabilities. And we were strongly pushing for it to be done here, but there was a lot of resistance from the Blackboard administrators, basically. But
So one of the things and I've been probably the most pushy is that right now, Brightspace, it's evolving. I mean, Brightspace, our use is evolving, and so is AEFIS. So, as someone who teaches in a 100% online degree program, who uses discussion posts as a place that we could actually gather data from, right now, this AEFIS system is not pulling in discussion posts. All right. So, and they've heard from me. They've heard from me every time that has to happen and that has to change. And there are some sort of workarounds they can do. And I said, those workarounds have to be effortless for the faculty for us to do it. So, they are the vendor, we are the customer. And so I keep saying, let's make sure the vendor's giving the customer what they need. And if we believe discussion posts are part of our important data to collect for at least in IPS, there's two, you've seen, I have discussion posts that are much better places to gather data than maybe a reflection paper or a quiz. And so it's evolving and things will keep moving forward, and they're reaching out to other schools to see how they do it. So they've been great to work with.
I think that brings us to the end of our time together. And I thank everyone who's bothered to take the time to review the video and I look forward to working with you because it gives me and my office a chance to really learn more deeply about the curriculum, which is the most important thing that we do here at SUNY Oswego, teach our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.